This. Good morning and welcome to Ask the Security Guy. I'm Holly Magnuson and I'm here with Shawn Kohrman. Good morning, Shawn.
Good morning, Holly. How you doing?
It's been a better day. It's beautiful outside, and even though I'm stuck inside for the moment.
Oh, well, at least you can see it out through the window.
Yes, I do have a small window and I am grateful for it. So just as a reminder, if you're when you join us, if you have any questions, you can ask those with the chat window that's to the right of the video feed, and we'll get to those. And if you're watching this after the fact, you can email us at iso@apu.edu, and we'll get back to you if you have any questions. But today we are talking about phishing, which I think most everyone knows what that is. But there was an article that came out a week or two ago that when I read it, it made me a little scared. Shawn, you want to take over now?
Sure. So, when we talk about phishing, this is a subject that seems like it's as old as the hills. But it's the general idea of people sending emails or phone calls or text messages with the intent to either get you to click on something, open something, or reply with information. In fact, we have a good example that was contributed to us very recently. I wanted to take a minute to show that. We'll flip over here. So some information is redacted.
Okay, Shawn, we got oh, there it came up.
Yep, some information is redacted. But this is an actual email that was received by a staff member here at APU, supposedly from another staff member at APU. Now you can see in the from line at aapu.info. So there was an attempt made to make this look like the APU edu address, which if you're not looking closely, and the name that was used was a highly placed figure here at APU, whose name would be fairly instantly recognized by anybody. This was sent to one of our folks in HR, and then you can see, have you got a minute? I want you to send me the 2016 Form W-2 wage and tax statement for all employees. I need this in my email ASAP in a PDF file. Send it as an attachment.
Shawn, could you go ahead and maybe zoom in that a little bit? It's a little hard to see.
Is that any better?
That'll be, yeah, I think that's better. Thank you.
Okay. So the language isn't perfect, but the way the from address is laid out is interesting, especially considering that from address actually works. There's someone on the other end listening and replying. So this is an attempt, what we call this is spear phishing, or more accurately, whaling. And we'll get into that in a minute. So, but yeah, this is a real deal. Our viewers and other members of the community here at APU graciously send us all kinds of goodies, either to our iso@apu.edu address, or they also send it to us through the spam@apu.edu address, both of which guarantee either some of the support desk or Holly or I will be viewing these emails ourselves and provide feedback as to, is it real, is it fake, is it something to be careful of, or is there a reason for concern? This is a good example. It's pretty cut and dried, and you can see what they're going for. They're going for identity information, financial information, tax info. Okay, basically everything that you're going to find on a W-2 is what you need for identity theft. Or, given the time of year it is, file taxes as somebody else, because every year we get reports of that happening. And unfortunately, with tax season upon us, it's there's some interesting things to realize. One, Super Bowl Sunday marks the generally marks the floodgates opening for tax accountants, tax firms, all those people who process this stuff for folks like us. It's a weird thing. I've talked to a few of these guys over the years, and they all say the same thing: is after Super Bowl Sunday, it's like the floodgates open and they are inundated with appointments. Before then, it's like, quiet as mouse. They get one here, one there. But from Super Bowl Sunday all the way through the deadline, they are going to be running flat out. I was helping a friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago who is a tax accountant prepare for the tax season, going through, taking care of antivirus and several other things on their computers. And this is part of an annual process for them. I mean, they keep their stuff up to date throughout the year, but once a year, usually in December, they like to bring in someone like me to go through all of their systems and make sure everything is clean, ready to go, no evidence of malware or keyloggers or anything like that that could be used for identity theft, or to steal their data, or more accurately, their customers' data. So that's just a little segue there. But to get back to the topic at hand, Tech Republic put out an article recently I wanted to talk about. And what they described is a new form of phishing where if the way it works is an account gets compromised, which means you get, your username and password got out and somebody can log in as you into your email account. Then what they're doing is they're going through your sent mail and copying and pasting bits of text that you've written to send out emails to people in your contact list with their payload. So now you've got an interesting scenario of you've got a legitimate address, you've got language that looks legitimately like the person you would expect it to be from, because that's one of the things we tell people to look out for, is language that doesn't make sense coming from that person. So if Holly sends me a message, there's a pattern of speech I'm expecting. Or if I get an email from Jeff Birch or any of my other colleagues here, they all have a unique style of writing and a unique style of communicating that you get to know. So when you receive a message that's so out of character, it should raise red flags for you. Now, one thing to bear in mind is when you get a message like that, don't respond on the same channel, meaning don't reply to the email and say, is this really you? Because if it's a compromised account, there is somebody eagerly waiting on the other end saying, yep, it's me. And it's not. So call them, walk over and see them, text them, hit them on Facebook, I don't care. But find another way to contact them to verify that they actually sent the message. Another interesting thing to look at is with a lot of these phishing emails that have links or attachments that have links, you'll see a specific thing pop up. And I'm going to share my screen again. I apologize. I know this is going to be a little small. But up in the top here, in the address bar, it's going to, instead of say HTTP or HTTP.
Shawn, you're showing me right now.
Oh, how'd that happen?
I don't know, but I don't like it.
Okay, well, let's turn that off. Okay, so let's try this again. There we go. All right, so up at the top in the address bar, you'll see data:/text/HTML dot, and then usually a really, really long string of stuff. What that is not a legitimate URL. It's capturing data, and then within a form that looks like a legitimate Google login page or a Google or a legitimate, MSN or Hotmail, or pick your login page, it's going to ask you to log in, and then it's going to fail. and it's going to bring you up an error message. What's happened in the background is that data is sent off to a form that the hacker owns, the bad guy. And now your username and password is out in the wind because it asked you to authenticate. So, like I said, Tech Republic did a great job, I think, with this little infographic. I mean, we've talked about what is phishing quite a bit. It's basically a form of social engineering, trying to get somebody to give you information for nefarious purposes. Three major phishing attack methods that we see. The biggest one we see and the most common is mass scale phishing. That's just blanket. You know, you see it every day. Your spam filter catches most of them. The next one is called spear phishing. And this is targeting specific people or groups of people. We've seen this quite a bit too with specific individuals here who have either jobs that are public facing or are high profile. Whaling, which is what we talked about earlier, is the specific type of phishing that goes typically after your C-level staff, your president, your CFO, your CEO, your provost in an educational institution. They're going after them specifically to compromise that identity because they are generally widely known and people aren't as familiar with their speech patterns, so they're going to respond to them out of course without verifying. So those are the three major types to be aware of. When we talk about what to look for, first thing, the sender name and domain address. In the first email we saw, it was aapu.info. But the username and the name presented was spoofed. It was, a legitimate person here at APU, and the email address was, the first part of it was correct. So the next thing you'll see is there's usually some form of attachment, or a compressed attachment. You'll see here is a zip file. And then there's some form of either impersonalized or general message or a highly personalized message. So we have both varieties here. Dear so-and-so, you haven't paid for your toll tickets or whatever. The more specific ones, the ones that are tailored, they use name dropping. They're going to say dear, and it's to you. But then they're going to say, well, we were contacted by the HR director, so-and-so, and blah, blah, blah. And off they go. Sometimes they have PDFs, Word documents, Excel documents. And the first thing that happens if you open one of these files is it's going to ask you to enable content. Microsoft Office has some pretty good controls built in to look for malicious macros, things that do stuff automatically within the file when you open it. Generally speaking, macros are disabled. You have to enable them one by one. And if you remember from several episodes ago when we looked at ransomware, this is how the ransomware got into the machine, was by enabling this content. So you'll see spoofed links, which if you mouse over them, typically don't go to where they say they do. Spoofed websites, and that can be a domain that has something as simple as a misspelling in it. So this is an example here of Bank of America, except it's Bank of America. So the next type of thing we want to talk about a little bit is phishing or voice phishing. These are phone calls, Microsoft calling you, or the IRS calling you, or pick your thing. This time of year, you're going to see a lot of phishing, voicemail scams, text messages, all based around the tax season. So the IRS is going to get you. They're coming after you. The IRS is going to contact you via snail mail. They're not going to email you. And if they call you, verify it. Call them back. Don't take the call. Call them back at the number on the irs.gov website. So,
well, in fact, we had a couple of years ago, one of our faculty members who is also does a lot of accounting stuff, and he says the IRS does not use email at all.
correct.
And so if it's a call, an email from the IRS, that's an immediate red flag because they
Right.
don't email.
Yep. Well, and here on the infographic, we see, I mean, the dollar figures are huge. I mean, last year I helped probably a dozen people with identity theft process as a result of people filing their taxes for them. In one case, the person apparently had the refund rerouted for the amount that they actually owed, which was in that case significant, and it caused a huge problem for them. But on the flip side of that, the IRS is also well aware of these scams, and as soon as you identify it or it happens, they have a very good process of working through that with you to fix it. So one of the few times you will hear me compliment the IRS, but they're doing this well. Smishing, we talk about this some. This is basically text messages with links, or various other forms, but it's the same concept as an email. So as we go through these different types, it's important to remember the same principles apply. Look for language patterns. If the language pattern doesn't match up with the person you're dealing with, question them. Contact them in another way. Look for the from address being weird. Look for spelling errors in the from address. If you see a link in an email, don't just click on it, put your mouse over it and wait to see if it actually goes where it says it's going to go. And most importantly, if you have any questions or if you receive an email that's out of character, out of turn, just not sure what this thing is, send it over to us at spam@apu.edu or iso@apu.edu so we can take a look at it and get back to you. Because we have the tools that we can look at these things safely. And plus, I have a couple of machines I like to blow up occasionally.
Just as a reminder, if you have a question for Shawn on this topic or anything related to security, go ahead and type that in the chat box to the right of the video. But Shawn, in looking at that whole issue of them, once they get into your account, then copying and pasting text that you've already written where the language then does sound like you, what would be things to look for there?
The type of request. They're going to be asking for something that's out of turn or not a normal request from that person. So in the case of the email we showed at the beginning, that kind of request going to a person in HR is just weird. It makes no sense. Not only that, it is so far out of policy that we would never do that anyway. But that's an example. I mean, it's when the language is perfect, the from address is perfect, and everything else is perfect. Now you're left with looking at what is it that they're actually asking for, and does that make sense from that person?
And what I remind people when I talk with them about it is if that a lot of times you'll see it's supposed to be an attached Google document, but yet when you click on the link for the Google document, it's wanting you to log in again.
Yep.
And that's another red flag, because once you've authenticated, Google doesn't need you to log in again.
Exactly. So if you're already in Gmail and you click on a link that's supposed to open another, like a Google Doc or a spreadsheet or something in Drive, it's not going to ask you to authenticate again because you've already authenticated with Gmail. So Google will take that and log you in if it's legitimate. It doesn't need you to authenticate again.
Well, so far we have no questions yet. So any other thoughts on this topic, Shawn?
You know, I realized, this is an old topic, and it's not exactly, exciting or as entertaining as some of the other things we've talked about over time, but it's equally important. I mean, the new as these bad guys, bad actors are getting more sophisticated about how they do this, it's easier and easier and easier to trip up. Security experts are saying, with some of these new kinds of emails that are coming through, they're so carefully crafted based on language that they found in the sent folder. I mean, people that do this for a living, like myself, are saying, yeah, I would have fallen for that too. It looks perfect. There's no red flags. So they're really bringing down, the number of options we have of things to look for.
So we do have a question and a comment, and I love the comment, but we'll start with the question.
All right.
And it's from Ray Martin, wanting to know about a link to the infographic from Tech Republic, and we will make that part of the comments that you'll see below the YouTube video once the show notes have been created and everything. So we will include that. Then we have the statement from Josh Stone, who I adore because he's just so on top of things. But his comment is, this should be required viewing for all employees.
Oh, well.
And I could get a hearty amen from that. And then we do have another question. Are iPhones accessible? Are iPhones in danger too? I can't say that word today. So
any mobile device is in danger. The idea that Apple is immune to, anything is a myth. And I think it was the last episode or the one before we talked about, in 2017, we're expecting a sharp increase in malware that is directly targeted at Apple, both the laptops and the mobile devices, iPhones, tablets, etc., iPads. So all of your iDevices follow the same rules.
Yeah, because it's always been about market share. And for years, Windows had the biggest market share, and so they were the biggest target. And now Apple, and especially the iPhones, are so popular.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing that, in the attacker's market, you go where the money is. You go with the largest footprint. So as Apple has taken on more and more market share, they've become a bigger target. It's just all there is to it. And the fact that, we haven't seen a huge number of vulnerabilities over the years in Apple products the default assumption is, well, because we haven't seen that many, it means there aren't that many. Actually isn't true. It's just that we haven't paid that much attention to them. Nobody's been poking at them nearly as hard as we've been poking at Microsoft. And to their credit, Microsoft has actually stepped up their game quite a bit.
I will say about time, but that wouldn't be appropriate.
They're better a couple decades late than never.
True. So no other questions have popped up. Again, if you have a question, you're watching this afterwards, please feel free to email us at iso@apu.edu, and Shawn or I will get back to you as soon as we can.
All right.
And with that, have a great day, and we will see you next month on March 1st.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye-bye.